friends, and thank you for joining. Just over a month ago, we gathered upon the loss of our beloved Elvo, Mr. David Cohen, Zichrono Livracha. Since then, many things have happened. Shiva, reflections, and each of us in our own way has made our first valiant effort to move forward. Yet for many, every so often, there's a searing pain, a terrible void. I know myself, I know people who have shared with me, David's missing. For some, it's as we walk home from shul. For others, it's in shul, at a shiur, at a board meeting. He was a dear advisor and a dear friend. Most of all, to his family, as a beloved father, a beloved husband, son, and son-in-law. For many of us, the Mishnayos sign-up expressed it best. People from all types of connections took upon themselves significant learning. We signed up collectively. Family, friends, chavrusas, rabbeim, neighbors, because David was so much to so many. Sometimes, in a situation that's very painful and emotionally confusing, it helps to ask, what would the Nifter have wanted? What would David have wanted? And I think that if we ask David, he would answer, please, forge ahead. He would talk to us about the shul that we built together. He would talk to his family about the family that we built together. He would talk to his business associates about the standards and attitude of excellence that we have for ourselves and for our clients. To chavrusas and rabbeim, he would say, the Torah, the people that we built together. To forge ahead. Certainly, for many of us, there are questions. Heavy questions. It's interesting that David was blessed with real clarity. I quote, Hashem loves me, Mom. But some of us have questions. And if we turn to David, I believe he would answer, you can have questions. We'll get back to the questions. Right now, please forge ahead. And we will. We join tonight to remember together. Together to create a legacy that will live with us, a legacy that we will treasure. We begin the program with Chaim Singer, dedicated to the Mishnayos learning, to the sign-up, to making sure everything was attended to make the siyum and to share recollections. Chaim.
Thank you, Rabbi Ryan, Shusa Rebbeim, friends. I personally learned two Masechtas for David. One of them was Rosh Hashanah. I picked Rosh Hashanah because actually it was the first Masechta I ever learned. And when I spoke about it at a Sima Shnai's program in Teaneck, which was the beginning of the idea for the program here, I spoke about a theme I saw in the mission about communal responsibility. And that just seemed like a very appropriate thing to speak about in the context of David. I did want, before making the siyum, to acknowledge the people who learned for the program, so if you'll bear with me. This is in alphabetical order by last name. David Besser, Rabbi Chaim Bieberfeld, Rabbi David Brodsky, Rabbi Yitzhak Charner, Jack Delman, Rabbi Yosef Edelstein, Aaron Feldman, David Feldman, Howie Feldman, Rabbi Shmuel Feldman, Ivan Graff, Neil Gross, Rabbi Shalom Hoffman, Daniel Jacoby, Steve Jaffe, Rabbi Zev Katz, Shlomo Katz, Larry Klein, Hirsch Kamaro, Scott Kushner, Russell Kwiat, Steve Lavenda, Jay Levine, Akiva Lombardo, David Makavos, Akiva Marcus, Eltzafan Mark, David Marwick, Rabbi Raphael Mendelowitz, Sheldon Meth, Daniel Moseson, Rabbi Joshua Musicant, Corey Myers, Chaim Pauly, Hananya Pinsky, Simi Pollack, Marshall Potter, Rabbi Ryan, Charlie Rachelman, Avi Rudak, Harold Saltzman, Rabbi Benjamin Sanders, Rabbi Zechariah Schwartz, Renan Seamus, Rabbi Hillel Shaps, Paul Silver, Rabbi Akiva Slepoy, Eliezer Snow, Ken Srag, Michael Steinberg, Aryeh Steiber, Arn Yehuda Sussman, Martin Swartz, Naftali Swartz, Leon Taxell, Zev Teichman, Moshe Tischler, Eli Verschleiser, Jeff Wieselthier, Avi Winokur, Rabbi Menachem Winter, and Michael Young. I appreciate bearing with me because I think it's a testament to David Shalom, the number of people that learned, and as the rabbi alluded to, the breadth and diversity of the people that learned. So in Maseches Rosh Hashanah, the Masechta, as I mentioned, there are certain aspects of it that tie in with the notion of communal responsibility. I just wanted to highlight two in particular. One, so we know that in terms of the sanctification of the new month, that it was required for witnesses to come and to testify. And this was not always a minor undertaking in regards to the weather, the timing, whatever, people had to come. And there was an incident recorded in Perek Aleph Mishnah Vav when 40 pairs of witnesses came. And the question was, you really only need one pair of good witnesses. So maybe just send them all home. And the Mishnah records that Rabban Gamliel accepted them, and he said that if you were to hold them back from coming, then they wouldn't come anymore. And so they went through the process with all the pairs of the witnesses, so they shouldn't feel like they came for nothing. And David, just his sense of communal responsibility and of thinking ahead to these types of things. Well, if we do this, what might happen then, and how's that going to affect things, and how are people going? What do they want to do? I remember, countless conversations along those lines with David. And then finally, at the end of the Masechta, in the latter half of the last Mishnah, it says that just as the one who's leading the davening is obligated to say the tefillah, kach kol yachid v'yachid chayev. Also, every individual is required to do so. Rabbi Gamliel says that the one who's davening for the tzibur can fulfill the obligation of everyone else. So the Gemara goes into a discussion, and Rav Kati brings down that the final halacha is that during the year, there's a distinction made between somebody who is fluent in the prayers themselves and someone who's not, so that the shliach tzibur can fulfill the obligation for someone who is not themselves familiar with the davening and can't do it for themselves, but for someone that is fluent, they need to do it themselves. And the final halacha is that during the year, that's true, but on Rosh Hashanah, the shliach tzibur can be can be motzei, can fulfill the obligation for everyone, regardless of whether they're experienced or not, since many people are not. And just again, this idea that there is, there's a responsibility that someone has for others that can't do or don't know, and there's also idea of giving back, and that's something that I know is very, very important to David in terms of his own personal growth, was to be able to then give to others and to encourage others to grow and to help others along the path. So I'll make the siyum, and I have some other thoughts I did want to share about David. Hadron Alach, Shisha Sidra Mishnah of Hadron Alach. Daitan Alach, Shisha Sidra Mishnah of Daitan Alach. Lo Nisnashim Minach, Shisha Sidra Mishnah of Lo Nisnashim Minan, Lo Ba'al Madem, Lo Ba'al Madase. Herav Nad, and Elohim Stireis, Oraska, Befinu, Ufios, Amcha, Beis Yisrael. V'niach ulanu anachnu v'tzet tzayinu v'tzet tzayamcha beis Yisrael kolani de shmechem de sorsel ishma loev tzachakmeni mitzvosecha ki l'olam hili ki libenu samim b'chukecha l'man lo evosh lolam lo eshkach pikudecha kivam hisanu baruch atah Adonai lamdeni chukesa amen amen avein selava'ed Odim anachnu lach Adonai Eloheinu v'levosenu shesamtachenu yoshvei beis hamedrash lo yoshvei karnos Sham mashkimim v'hem mashkimim. Ana mashkimim divrei Torah v'hem mashkimim divrei b'teilim. Ana melim v'hem amelim. Ana melim b'kablim sachar v'hem melim v'hem b'kablim sachar. Ana ratzim v'hem ratzim. Ana ratzim chayil haba v'hem ratzim v'her shachas shneimar v'talahim tardem l'ver shachas anshedemim mirma lo yechatzu yimehem v'aniach tachbach. Yiratzon lefanecha Adonai Eloheinu kashem she'azartanu l'sayim shisha sidra mishnah chach tazreinu l'haskil sidarim l'sfarim achrim lo sa'ilam. L'mod l'amed, l'shmol l'osos, l'keim as kol dvei samut terasech b'yava. Schus kol atanaim, v'talmidei chachamim, nizkarim b'shesh ha'shikra yamishna, talmud lana zarenu, shlo samos shator mipinu pi zarenu, v'zer zarenu ad olam. Yikuam banu, v'yishalecha, tancha osach, v'shachvacha, tishmor alecha, v'hakitzosa, his t'shichacha, kivi yirbu yamachu, v'yosifu l'cha shenos chayim, orachnim b'imina b'smala, osher v'chavod, ana ozim v'yitain, ana yivrech esmo v'shalom. V'yiskadel v'yiskadesh, shmei rabah, yalmad hu asid l'yishchata l'chayev, me'esaya u'lasaka, yason l'chaye oma, u'mivnei karta yushleim, l'shachlel hechalei b'gava, u'mekar pulchana n'chra'a me'ara, l'asava pulchana dishma l'asra, v'machlir kushad b'ruchu, v'machased v'karei, v'chayechon v'yemechon v'chay l'chol beis Yisrael, v'gal hizman kari v'imru amen. Yisparach, v'yishtabach, v'yispar, v'yisramam, v'yisnasei, v'yisadar, v'yisalev, v'yisalal, shmei d'kudesha b'richu, leila mikol brachasa v'shirasa, tush b'chasa v'nechamasa, damiran b'yalma, v'imru amen. Al Yisrael, v'yal rabbanan, v'yal tamidei-hon, v'yal kol, tamidei-samidei-hon, v'yal kamandoskim bo'raisa, diva asradein b'chol asar v'asar, Yehei lahon ulchon shlama rabba, china v'chista v'rachamei v'chayirichem v'zoner v'chei, u'for kanami kanvun v'shmaya v'yara v'imru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya v'chaim aleinu v'kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mroma v'yiseh shalom aleinu v'kol Yisrael v'imru amen. I have to admit that it's really sort of surreal to be speaking about David in the past tense. David and I had a very long relationship, very close relationship. I remember like it was yesterday, sitting in his car when we still both lived in Dumont Oaks, and sitting in his car, he drove me home on Motzei Shabbos, and he delicately brought up, this is when he was Shul president, this is back in 1998, delicately brought up the subject of me being the next president. And there are many people other than David that could have had that conversation with me. But I largely did it because I had a lot of respect for David and a lot of appreciation for him, and it was based on our relationship. But then fast forward to my second presidency, and when Rabbi Winter Zatzal came and spoke with me about being the Shul president, I really didn't want to do it for right reasons, a whole different story, but in any case, you know the end of the story. But I had one condition with Rabbi Winters, that's all. I said, I will do it if and only if David will take over the finances. And it's, David's, it wasn't just a matter of his expertise. It was a matter of the tremendous achrayus that he would take on when he would take something like this on. I remember when he was shul president, you come to board meetings before that, was, if you're lucky if there was an agenda, and he came in with, like, he had PowerPoint slides, and he just was like, really on top of things. And so I knew that if David was handling the finances, everything would be okay. And so that was my one condition. I told David, and he reluctantly agreed, and then continued in that role even past my presidency. So sorry, David. But it was just, there was a very special relationship there, and he had one of the best lines I ever heard about the shul presidency, which is, "It's a great job to have done." But just a tremendous sense of communal responsibility, and really in many ways was a role model to me in that regard. And I knew, there's board meetings could sometimes get lively, and there's certain people I'm like, okay, yeah, whatever, but like, David was kind of my barometer. Like, if I saw David was in line with what I was saying, then he was probably on the right track, and if not, I really was concerned about, okay, maybe I'm going in the wrong direction here. He also had a tremendous menschlichkeit in terms of the way he did things. And just as a small example, but it really stood out to me, is that during his presidency, one year I helped with the banquet of the Journal, I don't remember which, and honestly, I'm not just saying this, I don't even think I did all that much. I had some small role. And at the end, he gave out a sefer to every person who had helped out in the banquet in the Journal. And I was just so touched by it. And it just made a real strong impression on me. In fact, one of the times I visited him in the hospital, I had the chance to be able to learn from that sefer with him, which was actually very meaningful. And he also, his commitment to learning and to Torah, we spent, I guess it's probably about 18 years in Rabbi Winter's Sunday morning shiur. We almost finished Bava Metzia in that time. No, we were actually very close. I realized after he passed away, we were like a few dafim away. I couldn't believe it. But anyway, but we had so much fun in that shiur, and it was just, one of the things I loved about David was his intellectual integrity and the courage to ask. Like, he had so many times he'd like, okay, I know this is a balabatish question, but here's the thing. And like, he'd ask this question, which was the question everybody else was thinking, but nobody could ask, and it was like dead on, and it was just, yeah, I always counted on those balabatish questions. And there was one Gemara I remember in particular that we learned, which just, again, having been shul presidents in Bava Metzia, where they had this whole procedure in the Beis Hamikdash, where I still really don't get this. If you had some item that was lost that you had found, so you can't tell the person what it is, so they have to know, like, I had a this and I had a that. So they had this system, they had this one area where everybody started saying, Aveda. We're just picturing, like David and I, we're shul presidents, picturing like having hundreds of people have, Aveda, lost item, and it was like, do you have this? No. Do you have this? Do you have? We're like, this is, I don't know what they did, but they were saying, I can just see the president of the Beis Hamikdash just like, we got to do this different next year. This is not going to work. So one of my visits to him actually in the hospital, we were laughing about that. That was actually very nice to take that time with him. And lastly, just his commitment to personal growth. For him, it was, he'd ask a shai, just there was the marching orders, that's it. And there was no like, well, maybe a dray or this. He just wanted to know, what do I got to do? I'm going to do it. And he wanted to grow. He sincerely wanted to grow. He wanted to know. His balabatish questions were because he wanted to know. He wanted to get it. He wanted to grow. And he wasn't going to move on until he understood. So I just have to say that it was a real honor to know him, to have him as a friend. And I miss him greatly. Thank you.
Yeshikah Chaim, it is a privilege and an honor to call upon Rabbi Raphael Mendelowitz, a dear friend and neighbor.
Shus, Abanim, friends and family, and members of the entire Kehillah Kadosha of our wonderful shul, Knesset Yeshua. Rav Gedal Yeshua writes, in explaining the idea of an ofruf. An ofruf is when you call someone up to the Torah before the chasana, the Shabbos before the chasana. There are certain people which are obligated to be called. And one of them is a chasen. Another person is a person who has a yard site, is obligated to get an aliyah. Because the time of a yard site or a Sheloshim is a time of aliyah. Aruk tzurufin. It's a time to call up. It's a time for us to focus on growth and to be ma'ala and to go further. We're gathered here tonight not as a sad event, not as a depressing event, and to cry, but rather, as Chaim said before, as the Rav mentioned as well, to be inspired and to grow from our dear friend, father, husband, Rav Ram David ben Velvel, Olav Shalom. The Sefer Ksava Kabbalah, which was written in the 1800s by Rabbi Yaakov Tzvi Mecklenburg, who was a friend of Rabbi Akiva Eiger, was a great Rav in Germany. And he wrote a Sefer focusing on diktuk and explaining words which are found inside the Chumash. And in the pasuk of Vayitmu Yemei Evel Moshe, the days of Moshe's Avelos, days of seemingly mourning, came to an end, which is found in Pashas Zayis HaBracha. He focuses on the word Avelos. What does the word Avelos mean? And he says the word Avelos, I'll quote to you the Lashon, Eino Lashon Tuga. It's not a term that is used for sadness. Elo Lashon Choseh, something which is lacking, as we find Bal Tashchis, Bal Toisif, Alav, something that is missing. Darkei Tzion Ba'avelos, the pathways to Tzion are Ba'avelos. Not that people are crying, but the people of Yerushalayim are missing, are lacking. Rabbi Moshe Feinstein, in one of his tshuvas, also writes about the concept of Avelos. And he says, the whole inyan shall Avelos hu inyan shall cover hames. The idea of Avelos is to give respect. It's not a time to cry, but it's a time to grow. And how do we grow? Through understanding who the Nifta was. I'm just quoting Rav Wolbe in one of his letters. He writes, regarding a family member who was crying out to Rav Wolbe how to feel and to connect himself to his father. And Rav Wolbe writes, what does a person have in the Olam HaEmes? Milvad haschus shabonov holchim b'derech ha'emes. If his children follow in the ways b'derech ha'emes, zoisi haschus ha'amitis la'odom b'chaye ha'netzach. This is the merit that stands by a person in the Olam HaEmes. So let us focus on some of what I used to call them Reb David's qualities, and try to improve and maybe make personal Kabbalahs, personal commitments of things that I personally saw from David, from Reb David. I was zeicher to have a close relationship with him, going almost from the time that he moved into White Oak in the early 1990s. However, that relationship was solidified I think it was 1999, we started to learn B'chavrusa. And we learned for a number of years Mishnayos. And the first thing that I observed, which was so unique by David, as what Chaim mentioned before, his desire to learn. But let me tell you how the Seder went. I would read a few lines, maybe even a few words of the Mishnah, and the David would stop me and would say, let me read the words. He didn't want to be tutored. He wanted to be a perfectionist, to learn how to learn, and then to say it, to learn it. He wasn't embarrassed. He wasn't uncomfortable to make the strides. Ein habaishin lomad. The Mishnah tells us, someone who is a baishin, someone that is shy, someone doesn't have that aggressive attitude towards his learning, it's difficult for that individual to grow in their learning. And David was someone, ein habaishin lomad. If I'm not mistaken, I think we had the Cohens by our home at least twice by the legendary Menlowitz Seder. I don't mean it a Seder learning at night, I'm talking about on Pesach. And that Seder is a long Seder. And generally, sometime in the middle of Manashtana, which was close to 12 o'clock, David would be asleep. And then when it came to the matzah and the Mara right before Chatzais, he was up, crunching away. And we started Shulchan Aruch after 1 o'clock. And when he was well fed, he was well alert. And what he would say to me is, let's start over now the Seder. No, it's not the entire Seder, but he wanted to know the Torah that he missed at the Seder. And sometimes the following morning we would continue some of the Divrei Torah and the lessons that we discussed. Ein habaishin lomad. Friday night, many times during the winter time, we have a block party with cholent and other nice delicacies. In the winter time, and David was a regular customer. And there again, two things got him excited. The cholent and the Divrei Torah. And when there would be a debate amongst the men, what was better, David would always say to me afterwards, Rebbe, the Torah was better. And I would say to him, the cholent was better. And most of the time he consented. But ein habaishin lomad. He never was uncomfortable with steiging, with growing in his learning. And as Chaim mentioned before, the relationship that he had with Rabbi Winter Zatzal was so special. I still remember teasing him how Rabbi Winter used to hold his glasses. That was something that David was very famous enjoying to, not necessarily to mock, but to emulate. How Rabbi Winter used to hold his glasses, and then he would give out that krach, you hear? You hear? I mean, I can hear David saying it right now. But that was David. Everything that he had was a Messiah that he learned from Rabbi Winter. Ein habaishin lomad. I remember discussing with David questions that he had about his daughters, what seminaries they should go to, and their future. And to him, what was so important was the derech hachaim, the way of life, that they would grow. How important if it was kolel, or someone that was working, that was at the same time machshav, that respected the Torah as its principal value. And then we can never forget David's beautiful smile, that laugh. Whether it was talking about the Yankees, which I did not talk much about, he tried to convince me that I shouldn't be a Met fan. I told him I'm not a Met fan anymore. but he knew the roster of the Yankees better than I knew the ones of the Mets. Or whether it was talking about Mark Levine and other political figures that he enjoyed. But the bottom line came to something that he told me, one of the last conversations that we had, is als narishkeit. It's all for naught. What is so important is the values of Torah. This midah of giving chizuk to others, creating a comfort zone with that smile. We say in davening, one of the midas of Hashem is harofe l'shivrei leiv. Hashem is someone that heals or gives healing to those who are broken in heart and spirit. The Rosh Tevis, the acronym of harofe l'shivrei leiv, is the word hallel, praise. Praiseworthy is the individual who's able to be a roife l'shivrei leiv. One of the last times I went to visit the Cohen family, when David was still coherent, he communicated to me a story which to me is almost his goodbye story that he wanted me to hear. The Badal L'chaim, his mother was there as well, Lori was there. And that was a message that he heard from God. Now we all hear messages, but not always do we pay attention to them. And he paid attention, and it changed his life, his entire direction. And this was the beginning of the 1990s. One of the things that David loved was golf. And he excelled in it as well. He used to go to tournaments on a regular basis. And he played on Saturday, and he played on Sunday. He was totally unaware of what it meant to be observant at that time. And David and Lori purchased for David a new pull cart. Now I had no idea what a pull cart was, so I had to look up to see exactly what a pull cart is. Now I understand what it is. For his golf clubs. And before that last game, David had made up, this is the last Saturday, this is the last Shabbos that I'm going to play golf, but I can't give it up yet. So this was the tournament. And he played, and it seems like halfway through, I guess that's the 9th hole, he started to feel a sense of guilt. I'm playing on Shabbos. I'm playing on Shabbos. And again, the battle that many of us have, the Yetzer Tov and the Yetzer Hara, should I finish the game, should I not finish the game? He continued to play until the 18th hole. And then something dramatically happened that I guess only HaKadosh Baruch Hu could explain. This pull cart, I'm just quoting what Lori said to me, was exploded. It exploded. Never happened before, and most probably will never happen again. It exploded. And it fell apart. And all David was left with was the handle of this pull cart. David took that as a message. And the message was, Shabbos is here to stay. And that was the last time he went out to play golf. And the Shmiras HaMitzvahs started from there. I thought it was very befitting that the friends of Tov and Sarah Bracha are donating to the shul 30 sets of machzorim for Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. On the day that we hear on the Yemei Hadin, the Koil of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Koil of the Shaifa, we should remember what David did. He heard the Koil, he heard Hashem speaking, and he responded and rose to the occasion. When David found out of this terrible machla that he had, remember I was visiting with him, it was a Thursday night, and he said to me, Rabbi Menlowitz, what would you suggest? Something that I should maybe mekabel, I should accept upon myself to improve. And I thought of two things. And I mentioned this once before. And I told him, number one, when you say the bracha of Asher Yotzar, the most beautiful bracha on the health of one's gift called the body, focus on the words that you're saying. Stand when you're saying it. Without you, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I can't stand. I can't exist. Maybe focus on that bracha. And the second thing I mentioned to him was, in the Moedim D'Rabbanon, the tefillah that we say, when we hear the Chazaras Hashatz, the review of the Chazan, we make mention of a request for life. It is the only place, unless you daven Nusach Sfard, where on a daily basis we ask for life. And the words in Moedim D'Rabbanan we ask Hashem, Kein Techayenu Usikayemenu. Hashem, I'm thanking you for life, and so too you should continue to grant to me life. And David told me, Rabbi Menlowitz, I'm going to try. And I'm sure he did. And I'm sure the arichas, the extension that was given to him, was in merit of recognizing the gift of Chaim. So in conclusion, I just want to quote to you something I saw from Rebbetzin Esther Jungreis in her book. She found a note which her husband left her. He had passed away many years. It was in his 60s. And he wrote the following: a long life is not good enough, but a good life is long enough. Thank you, Hashem, for giving me a good life. And then she explains, goodness isn't measured by the length of years, but rather how we live those years. This goodness is not about what we amass, but what we give. It's not having more, but it's being more. For in the end, our lives are judged not by the businesses, not by the houses or the portfolios that we build, but by the lives we touched and made better. Instead of being consumed by competitiveness, serenity will set in, a serenity that will enable us to say, thank you for the life that God has given us. That was David. He taught us to smile. He taught us to grow gradually. He taught us to have and follow a spiritual mentor. He taught us to give to others, to focus on our family, to focus on our community, and hearing the messages of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. If we could work on some of these areas, it should be a schus for the entire family. And as David looks down from heaven, from the Olam HaEmes, he will say, Baruch Hashem, my life was a fulfilled mission. Yizichrei Baruch.
Thank you, Rabbi Mendlowitz. Gary and Julie Black have known the Cohens for over 30 years. As dear friends and as neighbors, it's a pleasure to call upon Gary to share recollections.
Thank you. So, I'm going to tell you a few stories about my friend David Cohen. But before I say anything about David, I'd like to say something about Lori. because no one could have done more than Lori. She fought that demon with David, and she looked behind every tree, she looked under every rock, she spoke to everybody, and she never gave up. And no one could be a better spouse, or a better mom, or a better friend than Lori. And David was very lucky to have her, and we are all very lucky to have her. But let me tell you about my friend David, who, like Rabbi Ryan said, we met in 1990. We were at Esha Torah in Potomac on Gainsborough Road with Rabbi Tom Meyer. And he was kind of a controversial rabbi, a real in-your-face kind of guy. And the things that he said would kind of sound pretty logical to us now, but back then they were kind of outrageous, you know. But every week or so there'd be like some new person that would show up. And Rabbi Meyer would say his stuff. He would say like, God came down from heaven and he gave Moshe the Torah. Or he would say like, from this week's parsha, whatever, you know, God split the Red Sea. And this new person would put up his hand and he'd say, Rabbi Meyer, you're a journalist. You work for the Chicago Tribune. Do you really believe that God came down and gave the Torah to Moses? And I'd be sitting next to David, and David would be going, Gary, look at this, listen to this, watch what's going to happen. And then Rabbi Meyer would lay into the guy, and David would be like, yeah, Rabbi Meyer, you go, you get him, Rabbi Meyer, you know. I mean, he loved it. And that was the thing about David, you know, the things that he was into, he was really into it, you know. He like committed to whatever it was, you know, whether it was like right-wing politics, like marketing, you know, or financial planning, or Yiddishkeit, or, you know, support for Israel, whatever it was, like he committed to it. There was no like, yeah, maybe, you know, there's a gray area, or maybe this, or maybe that. No, he was committed fully. And I guess I saw that when him and I worked for a short time. I worked for MCI as a contractor. He worked as an employee. We went across the street to the Pentagon City Mall. And he gets himself, we get an ice cream, and he pulls a yarmulke out of his pocket and he puts it on and he says a bracha. And I'm like, whoa, religious fanatic here, you know? But he committed early and he committed fully, you know? There was just... Anyway, so one of the things that I really admire about David, which kind of always amazed me, is he always dressed properly. You know, you go to like Sunday morning minyan, and he'd be wearing a jacket. We played golf together, and he'd be wearing like the matching golfing outfit, you know. He always was turned out well. He wasn't a dirty shorts, torn t-shirt kind of guy. And not only that though, but he didn't cuss, he didn't speak Lashon Hara, he didn't whine about the temperature in the shul, he didn't complain, you know. He was clean on the outside, and he was clean on the inside. He was a real mensch, you know. He was a real fine gentleman, like I told Lori, like Lori's dad, Mr. Solomon, you know, really a fine person. And that's what one of the things I'm going to miss about him. He was my friend, you know. You go to like a shul banquet, go to a bar mitzvah, you go to a wedding. He was my friend. He was a lot of other people's friends too, but he was the guy that, like, you know, he had a very sharp sense of humor, which didn't really match the rest of his personality. I guess he's from New York, and, you know. Yeah. He was really funny, great sense of humor, good schmoozer. And let me just say, last year, this week, it was my daughter's wedding, and after the wedding, you know, I'm up after the chuppah, standing there, and people are wishing me a mazel tov, you know. And David comes up to me and he gives me a hug, and he wishes me a mazel tov, and I see that he's crying. And I think to myself, he's so happy for me. He's so happy for my joy, you know? Like, what kind of friend is that somebody could be that happy for your joy that they're crying? You know, I mean, that's not replaceable. That's the kind of guy he was to me and to everybody, you know? So, anyway, when he passed, and I heard about it, I had an image in my head that came into my head that I'd like to share with you. When, before we moved here, in fact, we moved here because of the Cohens, but we spent a Shabbat here, and on Saturday morning, David would go to Rabbi Winter's 8 a.m. Shir. So I went with him, and I come in there, and I hadn't met Rabbi Winter before, and you know, Rabbi Winter's a big guy with a big smile, and he says, like, "Oh, I'm so happy to see you," you know, and I'm like, "Well, I'm glad to be here," you know. And when I heard about David's passing, I just imagined that he was like passed on or whatever, and there was Rabbi Winter, big guy with a big smile, and he says, "David, I'm happy to see you." David says, "You know, I'm happy to be here." And I believe that he is. I think he's in the right place. He's in the right place for him. I miss him, and he was my friend. And thank you.
Thank you so much, Gary. Together with Lori, Yibadal Chaim Tovim, David's joy and love was his family, his daughters, Sarah Bracha and Toba. We call upon Sarah Bracha, but as I understand it, Toba's thoughts are incorporated straight off the plane from Eretz Yisrael. Still on jet lag, we call upon Sarah Bracha.
First, thank you everyone for being here. For my bat mitzvah, our father wrote a speech imparting his fatherly advice and wisdom for my future. It was not only applicable then and for my entire life, but it can really reach every person in this room. His words summed up everything that our father stood for and how he lived his life. Although we're not celebrating a bat mitzvah today, we're celebrating our father's life. And we hope by sharing his words with you, we can all learn how to better our lives and give his neshama an aliyah. So my father started off by saying, "I've always believed that when starting out to learn something, you must learn the fundamentals before taking on more advanced concepts or practices. With football, you learn tackling and blocking. With golf, you learn grip, address, and stance, baseball, catching, and throwing. Religion is no different. Our rabbis of blessed memory have taught us that derech eretz, acting properly, precedes the acquisition of Torah. One needs to learn the ways of the world for being a person with the proper character traits in order to understand and apply Torah principles correctly. In starting out in your life as a Torah-observant Jew, I want to give you some advice that will help you focus on the fundamentals. Where does one get such advice? Surely I don't have it. The place to look is in the Torah. One of my favorite places to look for advice is in Pirkei Avos, Ethics of Our Fathers. I want to add by saying Pirkei Avos was always something my father loved learning with me and Toba, and we passed on to learning with our friends. And I think that is so apropos that this is what he mentioned when we're learning Mishnayos for him. And our dad was always so proud that he married someone who could trace her lineage back to the Maharal through our grandfather Papi, and he chose to share the Maharal's commentary on the Mishnah that he selected. So he continued. What is Pirkei Avos? These are the concepts that actually were communicated to the Jewish people from God. They are attributed to certain rabbis because at that period of time in history, they personified the meaning of the concepts. In chapter 1, Mishnah 2, it says, Shimon HaTzadik was among the survivors of the Great Assembly, and he used to say, the world depends on three things, Limud Torah, on Torah study, Avoda, on the service, and Gemilas Chasadim, on kind deeds. Nothing exists apart from God. Rather, existence flows from God to the world at every moment. Shimon HaTzadik reveals a striking fact. We, the Jewish people, are the link between this world and God. Therefore, the world relies on our deeds for continued existence. Look how important our choices are. They literally affect the world. A person relates to this world in 3 dimensions: oneself, God, and other people. We maintain these relationships in our daily life through Torah study, oneself, service of God, God, and kind deeds, other people. Torah study provides personal growth. It builds spiritual and eternal beings out of mere mortals. How? The physical body is finite. It must come to an end. In contrast, Torah provides a person with conceptual attributes, values and morals, principles and reason. Since these are not physical, they are not finite, and they never come to an end. Personal worth comes from internalizing the values and principles of Torah, and in no other way. It is in this way that Torah is a pillar of existence, for it molds us into whole and worthy people. I like to think of the Torah as a user manual for living. Dad found Torah in his 30s, but once he did, he found the emes it held and immediately changed his life. He let the Torah guide each aspect of his life and every action that he took. He constantly worked to perfect himself, and although his years were short, his days were long. And he continued. Service of God. This is actually related to the temple service, but now that includes the performance of mitzvos, and especially prayer. The service of God is the second pillar of the world's existence. It gives worth and wholeness to human existence in the context of the relationship with our Creator. Since the only existence is that of God, everything else must relate back to His own existence, and we provide that linkage through the service of God, doing mitzvos and praying to Hashem each day. If there is one place that my father spent the most time outside of work, I think we can all agree that it would be at this shul. He saw our shul as his second home, a place to connect and give back to Hashem. He davened with such concentration and devotion, not caring if he was the last one to finish. Even when he was sick and putter for most mitzvos, he wanted to daven standing and say every word. Before every Yom Kippur, he would spend countless hours preparing for Vidoy, and felt inspired and renewed after fasting and davening, and he stood the entire time on Yom Kippur. Continuing on, kind deeds. The third pillar corresponds to the third dimension of life, being integrated with others and doing good to them. To perform an act of kindness without personal gain is the highest degree of pure and enduring human worth. Kind deeds between one person and another induce a corresponding flow of kindness from God that sustains the world. After each stage of creation, God said that it was good. This meant that it merited to be created and continues to exist because of its goodness. For the major categories of creation, like plants, they were also called good, even though each tree and flower must wither and die. The category itself continues on, and this is what the term good refers to. Mankind was a different order of creation because man must create his goodness. The declaration of mankind as good was not explicitly stated. It was ambiguously stated as, behold, it was very good, tov me'od. Me'od is spelled with the same letters as man, Adam, Aleph, Dalet, Mem. For the choice to be good lies within us. If there is one mitzvah that my father truly embodied, it would be chesed. All the acts of kindness he did for this community, for my family, and for the over 20 boarders and countless friends that my family has welcomed into their home. It's truly inspiring. For his one job at the shul, 3 people had to replace him. All the things he did quietly for the shul and community that no one knew until they weren't getting done. So many Motzei Shabbosim that we gave up as a family so he could participate on the Chaver Kedisha and perform the ultimate Chesed Shalamas. My father ended with his fatherly advice to me as a bas mitzvah, which speaks so much to who he was and how he lived his life. Our lives are always filled with choices. Always choose to be good and do good. Do the right thing. By learning Torah, serving Hashem through prayer, asking Him for help, and performing mitzvos and acts of loving kindness to others, may we be zocha to be able to make good choices. Looking around the room tonight, I see all the family, friends, and teachers who loved our father and helped shape our family into who we are today. We want to thank the community for finishing all of Mishnayos, which the letters rearranged spells neshama, for which this gathering of your generous and kind actions would truly be an aliyah. On behalf of Tova, myself, my mother, and my father, thank you for always being there for us.
Thank you, Sarah Bracha. Lori, as Gary said so eloquently, as a community, we owe you a debt of gratitude for the tremendous care that you gave David, in quality and in quantity, during the bulk of your marriage and during the final months. His life certainly was lengthened from the good care, and the quality was awesome. Every time we had a conversation, David's comment, another opportunity to give my children a bracha, another Shabbos. We thank you for doing everything you could to try to make sure that the memorial would indeed be appropriate for such a noble person. The Torah home that you continue to build with your illustrious daughters is a beacon of dedication and of loyalty. We call upon Lori to complete the program.
Looking around at all the people here, my heart is full with so much emotion and so much appreciation. In addition to our family, my mother and a few of other family members who are here tonight, of course my girls, all of you here are our family. David and I have enjoyed living here in White Oak for over 25 years and made so many great friends. And a few of you we've even known for longer than that, before we moved here. When David first got sick last May, almost 2 years ago, it quickly felt to us that actually was like a community illness, and even more so, a community project for healing. We felt the intensity and the warmth of all the prayers and Tehillim said by so many people here and really all over the world. We felt the love and support of so many people by organizations and by individuals, in little ways and some very large ways. We have laughed together with some of the crazy and wonderful things that have happened during this time, and unfortunately, we've cried together. Most of you know that David had a quick wit, and of course, some of the other people spoke about that earlier. And he loved to say a lot of puns. They would just roll off his tongue at any opportunity. He would interject with a joke or a pun, and even when we might think it was inappropriate, and he would often say to me, "Lighten up." But that was David. That's how he would stay involved and how he would stay connected. And as Gary said, he was involved 100% in whatever that we were discussing, whatever we were doing. He really enjoyed life. Whether it was the intense excitement at a roller coaster, the beauty of each yontiv, being a part of almost anyone's simcha was his simcha. Listening to great music, barbecuing, enjoying a delicious meal, and taking long drives filled with just lots of quiet time just for thinking. David really loved the shul and the daily rhythm of life as a frum Jew. He didn't like to rush through davening or skip anything. Over the years, each week, he made a point to try to go through the Parsha 3 times each week, and he really loved learning, including gaining from different rabbis and teachers and learning mostly Musar and the Parsha and Musar so that he could apply it to his life and how to deal with others. And he would share what he was learning at the table during the week and especially on Shabbos. And he would enjoy hearing what we were learning or ask me questions about a shiur that I had attended. He enjoyed learning Pirkei Avos and other Sfarim with our daughters. We would prepare and plan everything together for each yontiv, even the menus he would help me with. There were Sefarim that we would learn together as a family at the table or just the two of us. And he would just light up when discussing Torah, especially when something clicked for him. And when it would make so much sense. And he would say, I'm learning to think like Hashem. We have felt Hashem with us, guiding us on this journey through his sickness and getting better, all the therapies and the treatments, and then him getting sick again. David felt it, and I felt it. And just like in this week's Parsha with the man, the manna, that Hashem provides everything that we need, and all that we have is what we need. And we say it in every morning in the morning brachos. And somehow, if we don't have it, somehow we don't need it. And now, my kids and I know we will continue to rely on Hashem's love and Hashem's guidance through our healing and moving on this journey without David. Thank you to those who have shared your thoughts and your memories of David tonight at the Levaya and during Shiva. And we really have been trying to remember all the good times before 2016. David's first 62 years of his life. He had a good long life of 62 years before everything happened. So if you have additional thoughts or pictures or videos, even just, I know somebody sent me a picture, Jeffrey Cohen sent me a picture of David and him shoveling snow back on Duman Oaks when the snow was like up to here. It was like such a fun picture, so please send me those pictures, send us those pictures. We really appreciate them. Thank you for learning Mishnayos in memory of David Avram ben Velvel, and thank you all for coming.
We thank everybody for participating in the Siyam Mishnayos and the Askara, Le'ilu Nishmas, David Avram ben Velvel, Yehi Zichro Baruch, may his memory be a blessing. We'll be benching in one moment.